Hello everybody and welcome to episode 4 of the YouTube version of Pot Hacks Only. I'm of course your host Justin Reyes, and today we'll be discussing 6 spring training facilities that have been used throughout history. Now I picked these 6 stadiums because they had rich histories to them or cool stories to them, and for the most part they're no longer being used. Now 2 of them are still being currently used, but one of them is being used by a university and the other one is being used by a major league team, but it is so old and has so much history to it that it had to be included. It is known widely as the Fenway Park of spring training facilities, so it would be hard for me to not include it in this video. So please bear with me as I try to make it through all of this. I know I was supposed to release this last week, but schedule is what the schedule is. My next episode will be on the 6 NL playoff teams from 2019. After that, I'm going to probably pivot a little bit and I'm going to change things up a little. And I'll announce that really on my Instagram and on my Facebook. If you don't follow me on Instagram, Just A Reyes is where you can find me. It will be in the episode description. That is the best way to get updates and news about what I'm doing here for the show. And I do put out little 6-minute updates, so I will not be doing a whip around the league because I already did that on Instagram and on the podcast version. I'm trying to cut down on how much time I spend on these videos. I'm trying to make them a little bit more concise, and I don't want to prolong them to make them overly long videos for the time being. I may go back to that, but I'm going to start cutting down the times of these videos, and that's going to be a big part of the pivot that I'm going to do. But without further ado, let's get into this episode. Let's talk about spring training facilities. The stadiums we'll be talking about today include Corbett Fields in Tucson, Tinker Field in Orlando, Florida, Baseball City in Davenport, Florida, near Orlando, Francisco Grande in Casa Grande, Arizona, Dodgertown in Vero Beach, Florida, and LECOM Park in Bradenton, Florida. As I mentioned, I won't be doing an opening. I won't be doing a whip around the park. I am going to include one little segment in the middle of this, but again, I'm trying to cut down time. So let's get into this. Let's talk about Corbett Field. This is the stadium on this list that I've been to, the only one. And I've been to it many times. I went to it as the spring training facility of the Rockies multiple times. I don't know if I went to it when it was the Indians. I did see it as the Indians, though, on Major Leagues, and so have you. If you've watched the movie Major League, if you look at the spring training scenes, when they're pulling up to the park, right, you have all of them pulling up. You have people walking in. You have Willie Mays Hayes dancing outside because he made the team. All those scenes took place at Corbett Field, and it was actually filmed at Corbett Field because that was the Indian spring training site at the time. Again, I was really young at the time when they left, so I don't imagine I was there because I lived in California at the time. But I've been to it many times as the Rockies, and I have been to it as its current owners a few times as well. So I've been to this one quite a bit. I have lived in Tucson before. I've been to Reed Park next to it. I've been to Randolph. I've been to all the golf. So there's 2 golf courses right there. There's 2 18-hole golf courses. You go one to the right, one to the left, and they're like right next to each other. There's the zoo there. There's the mall. It's a cool little area inside Tucson. Again, because I'm from Arizona, because I've lived in Tucson, I've been to it a bunch of times. Now, Corbett Field has been around a lot longer than I have. It was built in 1927, and it is the oldest ballpark in Arizona. If you remember the timeline, there was some baseball fields and stuff and stadiums in Phoenix, but all those are gone now. I think Phoenix City Park, something like that. That's where the Tigers played because they were the first team to play in Arizona in 1910. But then they left. So the Tigers played in 1910 on a barnstorming tour throughout the West all the way back up to Detroit, right? Starting in California to Detroit. And they played in Phoenix. And that was the first baseball game played by a major league team, right? The first officially recorded baseball game played in Arizona. And I believe Arizona, that was the first year Arizona became a state. So Arizona became a state in 1910, and then boom, Tigers come and play. But then nobody returns until 1947. So it takes quite a while, right? There was 37 years before a major league team returns. But that doesn't stop Tucson from, right, getting professional level type teams. So in 1927, they build what would be known as Randolph Municipal Ballpark, baseball park or ballpark, whatever you want to go with. The original teams that were played there, though, were the Tucson Wadies and the Tucson Cowboys. and they were there from 27 to 30. And I believe it was the way they just changed their name to the Cowboys. So it was the same team. They were part of the Arizona State League. So it wasn't like Major League Baseball, but it was a professional type team. 31 to 32, the Tucson Missions in 31 changed their name to Tucson Lizards in 32. They were there, and they were part of low-level Class D Arizona Texas League. So the league's getting a little bit bigger, right? Arizona, New Mexico, Texas. Mostly Arizona, Texas. New Mexico just never really jumped to the baseball scene, although UNM and NMSU aren't bad baseball clubs. And El Paso does have the Chihuahuas now. You've had the Albuquerque Isotopes, all those different things. But I've always been surprised about how New Mexico has not grown the way Arizona and Texas around it have. But I digress. In 1933, after the Lizards leave, the Tucson Cowboys come back, and they are there till 1958. Now, as I mentioned, 1910, Tigers played in Phoenix. In 1947, Major League Baseball returns to Arizona, and they start in Tucson, and they start at High Corbett Field. So if you're going to High Corbett Field, this is like the first official game. That's where the first official Major League Baseball game for spring training took place. Because when the Tigers played, they were just playing some local team. When the Indians came to town to play in High Corbett Field, they played the New York Giants. So it was two Major League teams at High Corbett Field. First official, well, it's considered the unofficial Cactus League inauguration. Like, this was like the kickoff for the Cactus League. So they ended up playing 7 more games that spring. I don't believe they were all played at High Corbett, but I think a few of them were. Because if you remember from the timeline episode, which is a couple episodes back, I really encourage you to go listen to that one. The Indians came to town, and their owner, Bill Veek, was a prominent ranch owner, and he lived near Tucson, so he took the Indians to Tucson. The owner for the San Francisco Giants, and I'm blanking on his name right now, but we will get into him later because Giants play a part in this too. He moves to Phoenix because he's a businessman. He wants to get part of the growing business, and he sees the future of Phoenix, and he wants to be a part of it, so he takes his team to Phoenix. Now, again, they probably played between both Tucson and Phoenix, but the first official game was played at High Corbett Field in Tucson, Arizona. And the Indians played there that 1 year in 47, and they stayed for another 46 years before they left in 1992. Now, a cool little side story is, in 1992, they were planning to move to Winter Haven, Florida, because they were kind of upset because a lot of teams were starting to move to Arizona, but they were all going to Phoenix, right? There was a team actually that went to Yuma a little bit, and I thought about including that Yuma field in here. Just not as much history. It was kind of there and gone really quick. The Padres were before they go to Peoria. But the Indians decide to stay there, so they get mad that teams aren't going to Tucson. They're tired of being the only team there. So they're saying, hey, we're gonna go to Winter Haven, Florida. A hurricane comes through and just wrecks that area. They can't move to Winter Haven, Florida. They turn around and say, hey, can we move back in? We were just kidding about the Florida thing. The Tucson High Corbett says, sorry, we would, but we've already promised it to the expansion Colorado Rockies, who are going to be starting in 1993. So we really don't have a place for you. Indians say, forget Arizona altogether. We'll continue our move to Florida, but instead they moved to Homestead, Florida, right? So it's just kind of cool. Like I said, they have one plan. Hurricanes kind of wreck it. They pivot, and then they have to pivot back, and they end up in Florida anyways. But they do end up back in Arizona, as you guys know. They play in Scottsdale at Talking Stick Arena. The namesake was named after Hiram High Stephen Corbett, and he was a longtime AZ senator and the president of the Tucson Baseball Commission. Now, it was renamed after him in 1951 for his role in luring the Indians to Tucson right for the spring. And a big part of that was because he was a senator. He knows a lot of the big business names, like the higher up type people. It's just kind of how it works in politics and in business. And of course, that means Bill Veek, because he was a prominent rancher. They have a close relationship. He talks him into staying in Tucson for the spring. He says, look at this gorgeous weather. You have a really nice facility here. Stay. They do it. So Tucson honors him by naming the stadium after him, and it remains the name today. Now, in 1969, right after the Cowboys leave, it becomes the Tucson Toros, and they become the AAA affiliate, which is like the first real affiliate to a major league team, and they take over right 1969. The Toros were there for quite a while. So the White Sox affiliate from 69 to 72. It was the A's affiliate 73 to 76, Rangers 77 to 79, Houston Astros 80 to 96, the Milwaukee Brewers in 97. And then in 1998, the owner of the Phoenix Firebirds bought the team. They changed the name of the Sidewinders, and then they moved to nearby Tucson Electric Park. So the franchise itself didn't really change. They just, well, of course they changed, but it was still like the same franchise, and they were still in Tucson, just in a different park. So their history at High Corbett is no longer there. And Tucson Electric Park obviously plays a role in it, right? And the Sidewinders were, of course, the Diamondbacks AAA affiliate for a long time. But the Tucson Electric Park does play a part in this, because when the expansion Rockies took over, they felt kind of like the Indians did. They didn't want to be left as the only team in Tucson, right? That was why the Indians left. The Rockies were like, hey, we don't want that same fate. Tucson's like, we don't want that same fate either. We promise to get you a couple more teams. They build Tucson Electric Park. In comes the Diamondbacks. In comes the White Sox in the same year. And I believe that was in 97, 96, somewhere in there. So it took a few years, right? Because 1993 was when the Rockies took over. And they were there for 17 years into 2010. After 2010, the University of Arizona takes over. Now that's what it is. And I've been to many games. I've seen them play a few different teams, including UCLA. I think I don't know. U of A and UCLA have had some really, really good teams. So I've been there to watch a couple of those games. And I'm a big fan of college baseball. U of A's history at High Corbett dates back way before 2010, 2011, when they took over from the Rockies. They actually played back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and part of the 70s there at High Corbett Field. And a big part of it was because, well, it had lights. A lot of fields, you'd be surprised, didn't have lights until later in history. So High Corbett was the one field in Tucson that had lights. So U of A would play the nightcap of a doubleheader. They would play rivalry games, or they would play district playoff games. Like any real special type of betting games, they played at Tucson Electric or High Corbett Field because of, well, the lights. And the first collegiate night game in Tucson was actually played at High Corbett Field, and it was U of A versus UNM, University of New Mexico, and U of A won 8-0. And the cool part of that story was that Ken High struck out 21 batters for U of A that night for Arizona, and that's still the school record today. And that was the first college night game that was like in the 40s, way back in the day. So and that's cool that record still remains today. 21 strikeouts. That's going to be a tough one to top. The Wildcats built their own field in 1947, Wildcat Field. They had their own on-campus field before that, but they're like their main stadium, built in 1967, but still no lights until 1975 when they installed lights, and they officially moved away from High Corbett permanently. Fast forward to August 10th, 2011, U of A returns the High Corbett Field as their only stadium. Now, I know U of A had Wildcat Field change names, but that's not really important to the story. Them taking over High Corbett Field is the big takeaway from the story. So if you go there today, U of A has done a lot of refurbishments. The Rockies tried some refurbishments. It didn't turn out well in my eyes. I went to it as the Rockies. I think it's much nicer now when U of A took it over and did their own little spin to it. It is a really good college stadium. If you do have a chance, if you're in Tucson during the season, probably, well, obviously can't be in 2020, so there's no college baseball this year, unfortunately. If you're there the next couple years in Tucson, I highly recommend watching a game at High Corbett Field. A lot of great history, and it is just a great facility. The next two stadiums are the two that are real close to each other, and I'm going to put them together. I said I was going to try to be a little bit more concise. High Corbett Field has more history to it than most of the other stadiums. So I think this one in Bradenton Park, LECOM, in Bradenton, Florida, have the two most, right? They have more hit to it than these other stadiums. So I will get a little bit more condensed moving forward. Tinker Field is in Orlando, Florida, and that's going to be the first one up. And that was built in 1914. Well, technically. They started playing there in 1914 at this area, but it was more of just a regular field. But people were playing at this field in Orlando for a long time. The actual Tinker Stadium was built in 1963. And it was torn down in 2015 and is now kind of back to its like high school field looking, where it's just kind of a field with a fence around it. But again, the stadium was built, 50 years almost after they were playing there. So, and that's the tough thing about it. So if you're looking at the history of it, so they were playing there in 1914, and original Tinker Field was built in 1923. But what they're saying is it didn't become like an actual like stadium where it had like all the grandstands, all those different things. And it's really just semantics on like the size of it, which changes. So it was a field. The official Tinker Field was built in 1923. And that's where the Reds played. And that's why it was like the official, because the Reds started playing there in 1923 and they were there for 10 years till 33. The Brooklyn Dodgers took it over in 34 to 35. The Washington Senators took it over in 36, and they really didn't let it go outside of a few years in the 40s due to World War II. We talked about in the timeline. So 36, 42, then 46 to 60. And the Senators really didn't leave, but their franchise left Washington for Minnesota to become the Twins. But they continued to play there until 1990. So from 36 to 90, outside of a few Warriors, it was the same franchise, the Senators/Twins, there for a long time. The one thing that wasn't consistent, though, was the minor league teams that played there at Tinker Field in the middle of that. Now, it is important to talk about the minor league teams because these spring training facilities, spring training is only a month long, right? It's in March. You can't just have this huge, beautiful facility just sitting there doing nothing for the other 11 months of the year. That's a long time for something to just be sitting there and then just going to roll up and it's going to look nice. Well, I mean, I guess you could technically say it's 2 months worth, a month and a half, right? Pitchers Catchers report beginning of February. It goes on till kind of the end of March. But still, that's a lot of time, 10 plus months of it doing nothing. So what do? They put minor league teams in it mostly, for the most part. They used to anyways, right? The Phoenix, there's not many minor league teams going on there. They do Arizona Fall Leagues there. They do a lot of extended spring trainings. They do a lot of just different training camps. They do a lot more things. So they use these facilities in the interim. But it used to be, and it still is kind of in Florida because they're all spread out. They're not in one centralized location like they are in Phoenix. They're used for minor league teams. Now in Arizona, what we do use them for is like high school playoffs, in which I've played at a few different fields. It was really cool. All-star games I played at, I think it was Peoria is the one I played my high school all-star game at. Man, it's so much nicer to play. Those fields really are. They do put a lot of effort and money into them. But again, they don't want to have them sit there go to waste. They use them for different things. So the Orlando Caps take over Tinkerfield 1919, 1920, the Tigers from 21, Bulldogs 22, 24, the Colts 26, 28, the Gulls 37, the Senators 38 to 41, and then from 46 to 53, the Orlando Saratomas 56, the Flyers 57 to 58, the Dodgers 59 to 61, the Twins 63 to 89, the Sun Rays from 90 to 92, the Orlando Cubs from 93 to 96, and then finally, the final team to play there was the Orlando Rays from 1997 to 2003. And actually, I think the Rays actually returned and played longer until 2015. They're considered the last team to use the field, right? And there was the minor league affiliate was the Orlando Rays. There's a lot of teams I wanted to blow through that. And so again, I'm trying not to be long-winded. I'm trying to cut down a lot of the talks. Keep moving on. It was placed in the National Registry of Historical Locations after the Rays left in 2004 because it was kind of not being used anymore. Still, it got torn down in 2015, as we mentioned. But the field is still there. And everyone says it's a gorgeous field. It's just not a stadium anymore. It just looks like a high school baseball field, just a really nice high school baseball field. The Orlando Stadium was built next to it, and this is a big reason why it was torn down. So they built Orlando Stadium next to it, and I'm going to show you pictures here. As you can see, it's a huge stadium, football stadium, and it's just right next to a baseball field. I don't know why they built it the way they built it. Maybe there's just not more room. I mean, I guess Orlando's getting pretty crowded. You have all the theme parks that are there now, right? Disney World, Busch Gardens, all those different things. But it's just, yeah, that was kind of the final straw, the straw that broke the camel's back for Tinkerfield. It was kind of going away anyways. And then you just build a huge baseball facility, and it looks like you're pulling up, and you're like, hey, there's a baseball field there. And you got to know that they were thinking that could be a parking structure, that could be something else besides a baseball field. Well, the field still kind of stands for now, but it's weird how they did it. The namesake of Tinker Field was for the Chicago Cubs Hall of Famer Joe Tinker. Now, Tinker is known for the famous poem Evers to Tinker to Chance. And it goes as follows. These are the saddest of possible words. Tinker to Evers to Chance. Trio of bear cubs and fleeter than birds. Tinker and Evers and Chance. Ruthlessly pricking our gonfalon bubble, making a giant hit into a double. Words that are heavy with nothing but trouble. Tinker to Evers to Chance. Now, it's known as Tinker to Evers to Chance, but it's also, the official name of it is Sad Lexicon of Baseball. It's just a cool poem. And if you're like me, you don't know what a gonfalon is. A gonfalon is a pennant. So the National League is known as the Senior Circuit. It was the first, like it was the biggest league at first. The American League is known as the Junior Circuit because it was the smaller league before they kind of conjoined together. And you would play your championships, but it was just the NL and the AL to begin with. So when you won a pennant, and it's kind of like a banner, right? It's those banners you've seen. I'll show you here. And it's just, so whenever you hear someone like the Nationals won, they beat the Cardinals and they won the pennant. The Astros beat the Yankees and they won the pennant, and then you go on to the World Series. So the pennant was like the winning the championship at the time. So they were busting their championship bubble. Like they thought they had a chance, and then these three Hall of Famers came through and just wrecked any chance they had of it. And that's what this poem is talking about. It's like the sad lexicon of no matter how good we are, how good we play, these three guys for the Cubs are going to continue to come in and just burst our bubble every year. And this was at the time, remember, in the early 1900s, the Cubs were just wrecking people. And a funny little part of history, too, is the Cubs didn't always play at Wrigley Field. In fact, I think the first tenants of Wrigley Field were the Chicago Whales. Now, I want to get into the history of Chicago in the future, here, near future of Wrigley Field, or just baseball in Chicago in general. So I'm going to get into more of that anyways. But the Chicago Whales were the team in Chicago for a while. Tinker relocated to Orlando after retiring from the major leagues in 1920, and he became an owner and manager of the Orlando Florida State League team for one season, 21. And then he became a local business and real estate. And his building that he used to run his real estate business out of is out on the National Registry of History as well, and it still stands in Orlando today. But the big deal of it and why he got the team named after it was not just because he coached a team there. It was because Orlando at the time, right, was, in 1920? It was a small town. It was a little tiny town in Florida. It was nothing the way it looks today, right? Or Disney World was long in the future. Why do you think Disney World was able to get so much territory? Because there was nothing there. It was a little tiny swampland. And this Hall of Fame baseball player, this like Joe Tinker was like a guy, like he was one of the best in baseball. He decides to move to your town. Like imagine you live in a tiny town. Like I live in a small town right now. If a Hall of Famer decides to move to Arizona or to Clifton, Morenci, Arizona, where I live right now, he would be celebrated everywhere he went. Everyone would just gawk over him. They would want his autographs. He would be bombarded. He would be a hero to many people here. Like everyone would be like all over him. And that's kind of what happened here. He was a small town in Florida. You had a Hall of Famer move to your town. So, of course, why not move to, right? Why not name the stadium after him? The next stadium is Baseball City in Davenport, Florida, and that is extremely close to Orlando. Now, I looked it up. It's about a 45-minute to an hour drive, depending on traffic and which route you want to take. But extremely close, right? Especially for the time. So a lot of places say near Florida, near Orlando. Of course, near Florida. It's in Florida, but near Orlando. But this is in Davenport, Florida. Again, I'm not huge. I don't know Florida as well. I know Arizona, but still, Baseball City. Now, this was originally developed in 1973 to be Circus World, and it was owned by the Ringling Brothers. The Ringling Brothers could not hold on to it, so in 1987, the textbook publisher Harcourt, Brace, and Janovich bought it out, and they wanted to do a baseball city. So they built, the circus still was there, the boardwalk was there, and now they were opening baseball stadiums, and they wanted the major league team to come do spring training there, so they reel in the Kansas City Royals. The Royals signed a 15-year lease in February of 1988. The teams started to build fields, and they built one to look like Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City, and the K is a beautiful stadium in Kansas City, definitely on my list of stadiums I want to go to, and a 5-field in total facility. So it's like most major league or spring training facilities you see now, there's multiple fields there because there's a lot going on. So they built them their 5 necessary fields so they can have all their different spring training things go on, extended spring training, all the things that teams like to do at their spring training sites. They build all those for them there. Again, they still have a boardwalk, and now they have a baseball theme park. Really cool idea. But when you're doing this at the same time that Disney World's getting going, it's tough to do. The timing was just not great. so could not survive financially. Of course, the Royals tried to move completely in 1992, but a 15-year lease kept them there until 2002. They had a AAA team there, the Baseball City Royals. They were there from 88 to 92, and they were able to get out. But because the Royals, again, had the 15-year lease, they were stuck there for a while. Finally shut down in 2003 when the Royals left for Surprise, Arizona. Now, again, there's not a whole lot to talk about. Some of these are going to be really quick, as I mentioned. But I just wanted to mention them because they're just, I don't know, a baseball theme park, Baseball City. Sounds pretty cool. I would go to a baseball theme park. In RB, they had a boardwalk, they had spring training. Like, it sounds like an awesome experience. It just sounds like the location and the timing was just poor. It was just poor execution on everyone's part. But what can I say? But I wanted to include it. Thought it was a cool little side story. Okay, this is the segment that I wanted to add for the YouTube channel. This is going to be the first iteration of it, so it's going to build. I don't know the name of it yet, but what I want to do, so I did the terminology episode, and there's still a lot of terms in baseball that I left out. It's just, one, it was hard, man. This episode is already starting to get long, and to cover every single one of them, one, is hard to remember what they were. They come to me later. Two, it just, again, that episode could have been like a multiple parter. But instead of doing multiple parts of the same episode, what I want to do is enter in this segment where I explain one or two words of it, pretty much the term of the episode, right? Or the term of the week. Although, yeah, we'll think of a name. So the term that I'm going to mention for this episode, so let's get into it. And I don't know why this one didn't come to me. It wasn't until somebody at work, I was telling them, brought it to my attention, that like light bulb, and then I remembered. Don't know how this slipped the cracks. The show name is Pot Hacks Only. Now I want you to I want you guys to know where I got that name, Pot Hacks Only. There is a term in baseball called daddy hacks. People take daddy hacks only, right? Which is just a big hack, just like hard swing. It's not like some weak little hit or like some soft swing. It's when you freaking, you know what I mean? You're taking a daddy hack. You're taking a big hack at the ball. Daddy hacks only is a term used a lot today among baseball fans, especially younger baseball fans. Now, when I was thinking of a name for the show, I mean, even now I'm not completely sold on top of Pot Hacks Only, but it was the first name I thought of. I wrote it down, and then I just rolled with it. I'm trying not to move it, to change it, because that's it's really hard. You wouldn't think of, like, it's very hard to think of a name for what you're trying to do. You think it would just come to you, but you want to hit the perfect name, and then you want to stick with it. So, right, because you change your name around, it hurts the show more than it helps it. So I was thinking, and then my little brother who's in high school, constantly says daddy hacks only. And I think that day he had said it to me, so it was like fresh in my brain. And so he says daddy hacks only, and so I'm like, I don't know. Potty hacks only, it sounds terrible. Maybe pod hacks only, because it's podcast, right? Pod kind of sounds like dad, pod dad, hacks only. So that's where the name comes from daddy hacks only. So if you hear someone say daddy hacks only, or daddy hacks, it's just somebody that just, right, gripping and ripping it. just letting it go. So that's the first term. They're gonna get better, I promise, but I thought everyone should know where the name of the show came from. That's where the name of the show comes from. So it's like a two-parter for this one. But this is gonna be the new segment in every show. I'm gonna get out of here because I'm trying to keep this show shorter. But that's where it comes from. All right, the next facility on this list was one that I teased on my Instagram and my Facebook. Well, one of the two. I did Tinkerfield, and I also did Francisco Grande, and that is located in Casa Grande, Arizona. Now, I've lived in Arizona, again, majority of my life, right? 25, 26 of the 28 years. I've been in Arizona, I've never heard of it, never been there. I've been to Casa Grande plenty of times. We have family there, but yeah. So it was constructed in 1959, but the Giants didn't move there until 1962, and they were the San Francisco Giants at the time because they moved from New York to San Francisco in 1958, right? They constructed this building in 1959, and then they moved there in 1962. Now, if you remember, they started doing spring training in 1947. So They played in Phoenix for 15 years, I think, is my math is right, before moving to Casa Grande. And again, I think baseball, Phoenix Park was where they played, and then it got shut down. I probably should have checked that, but I didn't. So here we are. They moved their spring training again from Phoenix to nearby Casa Grande in 1962, and their owner, Horace Stoneham, built a $2 million resort for a few things, right? It's a self-contained environment, which some spring trainings are kind of going to now, is Vero Beach, as we get into in a second. It had an airstrip, 18-hole golf course, and I think now it has multiple golf courses. It's supposed to be really nice golf courses too. It has a pool that is shaped like a baseball bat, as you can see here. It also has a multi-field complex. It was seen as an investment in the Casa Grande real estate. Again, Horace Stoneham, I believe, was the owner back in 1947. A big part of, was Bill Veek for the Indians, was a rancher, wanted to go to Tucson. Stoneham was a businessman, and he wanted to get in the ground floor of Phoenix. He got into the ground floor of Phoenix, and now he wants to be on the ground floor of Casa Grande, as he saw it as a growing, bustling city. And he thought he can not only bring some attention to his Giants, give them their own secluded resort location, but also make himself a pretty penny off of this. And a big part of this was because just outside of a proposed freeway, right? So the freeway was going from Tucson to Phoenix. Casa Grande is right in the middle of it. And there was supposed to be a freeway that was going to go right near where the resort was at. And they were going to be the first ones there. So they're going to go, you're going to hit the freeway. Then you're going to see this huge resort that's for the Giants, that's for Casa Grande, known as Francisco Grande. And it was just going to take off. And that was all great until all the plans for the freeway were scrapped and they never revisited. In fact, the freeway went a little bit more south. So he had a great idea. Like I said, a few of these things, like Baseball City, just the timing and execution and things that are around them outside of their control, right? The freeway moving, Disney World being built nearby, just didn't go their way. So it could be a great idea now. Didn't really work out for them at the time. And that's kind of what happens with a lot of these things, and not just baseball facilities, as you've seen. The timing is kind of everything, and timing was bad here. The Giants still had to travel to Phoenix because of no freeway access. They were always traveling to Phoenix for the majority of their games. So in 1980, not too long after they were there, they moved back to Phoenix, and they're still there. So the fields now are gone, but the resort still stands, and you can kind of see like a baseball bat shaped pool, as we showed you, and it has a few different things. So like the top of the resort is supposed to be like a ball cap that looks over there. The fields are removed for a football field, and then that was removed. I think another course was put in there. So it still stands today, but it's like an outdated type resort. It would be really cool for me to visit, just for the baseball history of it, that it was built actually like to be a baseball resort. Again, I'm for it. So I may try to visit one of these days. And it did get a $8 million renovation in 2004, but still, it just kind of went by the wayside. Now, this is from the Salt River Stories. When the resort first opened for play, optimism swirled like desert dust devils as Willie Mays hit a 375-foot bomb off Gaylord Perry. Strangely, the San Francisco Grandes never served as the venue for the Giants spring training games. Despite being over an hour drive away, the Giants continue to play their home games at Phoenix Municipal Stadium. While exhibition games still did not take place at the resort's baseball stadium, it rarely saw use. Instead, the 4 training fields saw continuous use. Great players such as Willie Mays, Juan Marichal, Willie McCovey trained and practiced on these fields. So a lot of legends were there, right? Mays, Marichal, McCovey, Perry. The Hall of Famers, legends, played on those fields, but they never actually played their spring training games there. They kept going to Phoenix Municipal Stadium. And I believe that's the same Phoenix Muni that Arizona State plays at. And the A's just played at recently. A really nice facility, Phoenix Muni. I've been to that. I went actually there last year and watched Ryan Garcia for UCLA pitch against, I don't remember the guy for Arizona State. They were both drafted early rounds. It was great. It was a Star Wars night, and both of them are really, really good young pitchers. It was a pitching duel for most of the game. Really great game to go see. And Phoenix Muni is just a nice facility. But again, I think it was just poor execution, poor timing for it. But Francisco Grande was a great idea. But let's pivot. Let's pivot to the better of the rivalry. Of course, when I say the better of the rivalry, I'm talking about the Dodgers. And the Dodgers Giants are, to me, they're the best rivalry in baseball. They were rivals in New York, in the same city. They both moved to California at the same time, thanks to the Dodgers. You're welcome, Giants fans. And they continued their rivalry throughout there. And they both just have huge input on the history of baseball. So even though I'm a Dodger fan and I've been trained to not like the Giants, I respect their history. I respect a lot of their players. In fact, I like a lot of their players today and in history. And that's the beautiful part of sport is you can be rivals and still respect each other. And you need rivals like the Dodgers, Giants, Yankees, Red Sox, Cardinals, Cubs. And I digress. Let's talk about Dodgertown. It's in Vero Beach, Florida. Now, Dodgertown is one of the most documented and talked about facilities in all of baseball. So there's so much information that I could go over here, but there's a lot online. So I'm going to try to give you the condensed version of it. I still consider one of the best baseball complexes, if I can speak, in baseball. But because of its small, isolated location, teams are reluctant to go there, and they haven't since the Dodgers left. It was really built in 1948 on an old airstrip used by the Navy for World War II. And if you remember in the timeline episode, I did talk about World War II and how they were building a lot of different facilities for World War II that were being used just specifically for that time frame. And then when that time frame was done, they just abandoned them, and they had these huge complexes that were not being used anymore. Vero Beach was one of them. When the war was over, the Navy returned the complex to the city, and the city had to find a way to keep the area from going to waste. Enter the Dodgers. 1953 Dodgers moved from Brooklyn to Los Angeles, and because of this, a lot of fans felt isolated. But Holman, a local businessman, played a huge role in creating the airstrip in 1929, and he was tasked with repurposing it right once the Air Force left. Now, he heard the Dodgers were looking for a new spring training site, and he called Branch Rickey. Branch Rickey, again, was the legendary owner of the Dodgers at the time. And Rickey sends E.J. Buzzy Bavarian in November of 1947. Now, Holman never lets Buzzy leave as he pitches Dodgertown. All right, this is for the Dodgers, built for the Dodgers. Look at this huge complex. Look at all the things that you can do here. And it really was a huge complex. We're going to get into like how many teams and players that can fit into this and all the things that they were able to do with this one complex. But they pitched them again, Dodgertown, like, hey, this is your own town. It's not just going to be a regular spring training facility. Like, this is just, it's all the Dodgers. Like, it's like a whole town just for you guys. And it was, of course, he was sold on it, right? Branch Rickey was all for it. He was supposed to hit multiple starts, was Buzzy, stops along the Florida coast. Holman never lets him leave. Dodgers don't want to leave. They end up going there in, again, 1948. The Dodgers, as I mentioned, moved from Brooklyn to LA in 1953, just a few years later. And it left a lot of Brooklyn fans crushed because Brooklyn was a smaller of the boroughs at the time. A lot of their fans were made fun of, but a big thing that they had was each other and their love for the Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers were named after their fans. They were the trolley Dodgers, right? Because you had trolleys that were continually going on the streets of New York at the time, and fans were having to take the subway, and then they were having to dodge these trolleys as they made their way into the facilities, and they would do that just to see the Dodgers play. So the Dodgers went from the groomsmen the bridegrooms to the Robins, and then finally the article came out calling them the trolley Dodgers because of their fans. They wanted to honor their fans, and they named themselves the Dodgers. That's why the Dodgers have such a unique name. And a quick history of where their name comes from. But they just had their connection with their fans from the beginning. So fans, again, of course, were a little bit dejected when the Dodgers left. So what did they do? Well, fans started to leave to Florida. They started moving from Florida from Brooklyn and moving to Florida to Vero Beach. So it really did become like a Dodger town. So it wasn't just that the Dodgers were there with all their teams and they were training there, but a lot of their fans from Brooklyn were moving to that whole area. So that whole area was just Dodgers and Dodgers fans. And that's really cool. Like, it's so unique to baseball. No other really sport you can kind of say has that. Well, at least in America. There might be some in like Europe and in Africa, South America, Asia, right? There's a lot of different things that I don't know about. But in America, it's very, very unique to baseball and to the Dodgers. Just imagine, like, it's a small little coastal, almost like a little island type on Florida or wherever, And team moves there, moves all their minor leagues affiliates there, all their training facilities there, and then all their fans leave from Brooklyn down to this area, and just becomes all encapsulated by Dodgers and their fans. So it's really cool. And again, being Florida, it gave them a little bit closer move than having to move all the way to California to Los Angeles. That was growing at the time, becoming more and more expensive. 1998, Fox Entertainment Group buys the Dodgers from Peter O'Malley, right? And the O'Malleys had bought the team from Branch Rickey in 1950, shortly before they moved to LA, right? The O'Malleys were a big part of that. They bought it. 3 years later, they moved to LA. They talked the Giants into moving to San Francisco. And a lot of people were worried at the time when the O'Malleys bought it in 1950 that Dodgertown was just getting going, was going to kind of go by the wayside, right? This again before the Brooklyn fans moved from Brooklyn to Florida, all those different things. But the O'Malleys loved Dodgertown and Vero Beach, loved it. And they were the big reason why it is what it is today. Now, Branch Rickey may have moved the team there, but the O'Malleys are why they're there. O'Malleys are generally loved among Dodger fans and during their ownership time. And a big part of that was because of the owners that would kind of follow them. Now, O'Malley, the father, passes away. So Peter O'Malley and his sister sell the team, and again, 1998, 48 years later, to Fox Entertainment Group. And again, people started to worry about the fate of Dodgertown, but Fox EG signed a 20-year taxpayer-friendly lease in 1998 as good faith to Dodger fans. So Dodgertown seems safe for the time being. Fast forward a few years to 2004. Boston developer Frank McCourt buys a team for $430 million. Now, if you're a Dodger fan, you know the McCourt era is known as the dark days of the Dodgers. It was rough times. There were some decent teams. No, there were some good teams. There was some talent there. I think towards the end of that tenure, you had the kind of the beginning of the Adrian Gonzalez phase. You have the Nomar Garcia-Parra comes over. Russell Martin, the beginning of it. They do have Kershaw at the time, Andre Ethier, Matt Kemp, those kind of guys. There was some really good teams. Some of my favorite players, Dodger players, were part of those teams, but they were just so poorly owned at the time. Frank McCourt caused so many issues. And then in 2007, he announces that the Dodgers will be moving to Glendale, Arizona with the Chicago White Sox. So they signed a 20-year deal in 1998. Didn't last really 10 years. Now, I was kind of happy they moved to Glendale, Camelback Ranch. He has a really, really nice facility. It's one of my favorites. And I get to go see the Dodgers every spring and go see them play. I've seen a lot of great players pitch and play for the Dodgers. I actually saw Manny Ramirez when he made a spring training debut for the Dodgers. I can go on and on and on about the Dodgers players I've seen at Camelback Ranch. So I was happy for me, but for a lot of Dodger fans, and for especially Dodger fans at Dodgertown, and for the history of it, it was kind of sad because it was the end of an era that happened for over 50 years. The O'Malleys tried to buy the team back, so the McCourt era finally ended. So from 2004 to about 2011, he owned the team. Around 2011, him and his wife got a divorce. They argued over proceedings. He started to go bankrupt. He needed to sell the team. So the O'Malley family tries to swoop in, take the team back, and then move the team back to Dodgertown because, again, they were just huge fans of Dodgertown. Like, Dodgertown isn't what it is if it wasn't for the O'Malleys. They were a big part of it. But Stan Kasten, the Guggenheim Group, Magic Johnson, they buy the team instead for an obscene amount of money. And Dodgers take Camelback Ranch. And it really was good for the Dodgers. So they started to fix what's going on. Friedman moves in. And the Dodgers that you've seen the last few years that are dominant, the stadium rebuilds, all those different things, are because of the new ownership group. Now, like the O'Malleys, I'm not sure if they would be doing as many good things for the Dodgers as a franchise as what Kasten, Guggenheim, Johnson, all those guys are doing. But the O'Malleys did buy Dodgertown after all, and they kept the upkeep, and they did a lot of great things for Dodgertown, regardless of whether they own the Dodgers or not. And this is a plaque that stands at Dodgertown. It says, "Baseball in Dodgertown." Dodgertown was the spring training facility of the Brooklyn/Los Angeles Dodgers, originally part of a World War II naval air station. Dodgertown became the spring training home of the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1948 when local businessman leader Bud Holman convinced the Dodgers to set up a spring training facility in Vero Beach. Here, Dodgers president Branch Rickey sought to create a baseball campus where players could live and play together. Dodgertown was the South's first racially integrated spring training camp where 600 plus players from the Brooklyn Dodgers' 26 minor league teams, Hall of Fame players, Jackie Robinson and Roy Campanella, were among the first African American players to train here. In 1953, the Dodgers President Walter O'Malley privately built the 6,500 seat Holman Stadium and a state-of-the-art ballpark at Dodgertown. During its history, 6 world championships and 14 National League pennant winning teams played at Dodgertown. In 2001, the Dodgers sold Dodgertown to Indian River County, then leased it back until 2008 when the spring training facility moved west to Arizona. In 2012, the O'Malley family stepped up to manage historic Dodgertown as the year-round multi-sports complex. Again, this is the plaque that's at Dodgertown. And they did take it over in 2012, as I mentioned. And then 7 years later, just last year, on April 2nd of 2019, Major League Baseball takes over Dodgertown and renames it the Jackie Robinson Training Complex. And it's still used today. Ah, man, 600 plus players trained. That just shows you the size of this place. There's no other spring training facility or complex like it. Right. It's one of a kind. And that's why people still kind of hope that a team will take it over again if it just wasn't for the location. It's the biggest issue with Dodgertown. The last stadium on this list is LECOM Stadium in Bradenton, Florida. Now, this is the oldest one on the list, but it's also the only one still being used by a major league team for spring training. Well, not technically the oldest one. It's built in 1923, right? Tinker Field was in 1914, but it kind of moved. This actual stadium that they're using now in LECOM Park, as we mentioned, it's just the facility and location remain the same. That's why they kind of fit into these different boxes and locations, right? So I think Corbett Field, that stadium may technically be older. Same with Dodgertown by like a year because it changed. But spring training started happening here for the St. Louis Cardinals in 1923, which I believe might be tied with Tinker Field as the first because they didn't play there until 1923. So in 1923, Tinker Field started being used for spring training, and so did LECOM Stadium, and that was being used for the St. Louis Cardinals at the time. Now, it's currently being used by the Pittsburgh Pirates, who moved there in 1969, but a few teams moved there in the interim, mainly the Cardinals and the Braves. Now, the Braves were the Boston, then Milwaukee, then Atlanta Braves as they moved around before settling in Atlanta. But they were the Boston Braves for the beginning of this. So the current stadium is not the same stadium that was used in 1923. As we mentioned, a lot of things changed, but the complex and location kind of remain the same. So the location is the main part that remains the same. The current ballpark was built after World War II. World War II shook up the world, changed the world a lot. It shook up the baseball world and changed the baseball world a lot, as we've mentioned, right? Especially when it comes to spring training, it seems like it's affected it maybe more than the regular, but I do want to get into a World War II type episode. But anyways, there was a lot of there was a lot of bases built because people were getting drafted for the war. There was more people in serving at the time than ever before because, again, they were being drafted in to fight this great war. And when they were done, all these people went back to their jobs that they had before, and they needed to find something to do with the stadiums because they didn't have enough people to fill them. So they had all these great facilities, and they just kind of returned them to the city. Same with Vero Beach, right with Dodgertown. They just returned to the city, and they're like, hey, thank you for letting us use this, even though you probably didn't have a choice. But here's this great stadium for this great complex. Find something to do with it. It has a lot of barracks, has a cafeteria, it has a training, right, for working out, all those different things. It has gyms, it has wide open fields that people used to run. So it was almost perfect for a spring training site. That's what they were perfect for it. So teams were taking it over. Dodgers took over Dodgertown, and the Boston Braves said, I know we have a decent looking field right here, and this was known as 9th Street Park at the time, but if you look over there at that facility, right? Look at that complex. It has the barracks, has places for us to sleep. It has cafeterias, has gyms, has wide open fields. Why not build a stadium there? And we can move our spring training complex. We can still stay within Bradenton, Florida, inside your town, but we have a lot more to it than what we have here, and it doesn't require construction or a lengthy building process. We just need to build a stadium and everything else is there. So the city agrees to it, and they move them from where they were located slightly south to their new facilities. And it was known as the 9th City Park from 23 to 26 when the Cardinals had it. The name changed from 9th Street Park from 27 to 47. And then it became McKitchney Park in 62 all the way till 2017 when its name changed. And again, the Boston Braves had it for majority of that time until 1969. And from 1969 till now, it has been part of the Pirates organization. So they've now have currently owned it longer than anybody else. And it was known as McKitchney Park, but has now changed to LECOM Stadium in 2018 because it got a couple decent renovations. So the two major renovations happened in 93 and 2013 as it continues to kind of build into the future, because these older facilities, I mean, I don't know if you've seen them. They just don't have the amenities, or they're not as nice. It's kind of like we've seen at Wrigley Park or at Fenway, where they had to do renovations to the clubhouses, all those different things, because they were just so old and beat up. And it's just what happens over time, right? And new technology comes about that they don't have. They needed to do these renovations. So they do the renovations 1993, 2013, as there's more things that are happening. But a cool little thing, well, not really cool, but a little side note is that lights weren't even installed in this stadium until 2008. So a lot had to be done to it, but a lot was done to it by Bradenton. They were able to step up and kind of do those things. And it is currently the oldest ballpark in both the Cactus League and the Grapefruit League because, well, Dodgertown's not being used because it was kind of the same time frame. And Corbett Field isn't being used anymore. So it's the last one standing. And in fact, there are only two stadiums that are older than LECOM Stadium that are used in all of Major League Baseball, and that is Wrigley Field and Fenway Park. And that is why LECOM Stadium is known as the Fenway Park of baseball. And it's really cool looking. Like, I hope you guys enjoy the pictures that I'm putting up here. And it has like the mission style look to it. It definitely an older facility, but the Pirates, in fairness, and Bradenton have done their best to continue to update it so that the Pirates don't feel like they're playing in some old, busted down stadium. They do play in a really nice complex with just a lot of history to it. Now, the Bradenton Marauders play here during the season. Again, you got to fill it during the regular season. And that is the Pirates Class A Florida State League affiliate. And throughout its history, like most of these other ones, they've just had a litany of different minor league teams. That will do it for episode 4 of the YouTube version of Pod Hacks Only. Remember to hit that thumbs up. Remember to hit subscribe. Leave a comment. Please do those things. They go a long way in growing this show. That's how the show gets noticed, is the subscriptions because of the thumbs up. And if you're subscribed, you get to get updated on all things that are happening. Another great way to get updated on all things that are happening is to go to my website, justareyes.com. You can contact me there. You can see about all things Pod Hacks Only as far as the podcast and the YouTube channel. I do have a blog there that I have one post on that I'm eventually going to get back to. A big part of why I haven't is because I'm putting energy into these episodes. I'm also currently doing school, work. I got a lot of different things that are happening, but those things are going to slow down, and I'm going to be able to get back to the blog portion of it. So you guys can always check that out at justareyes.com. I also have another project coming up that I'm really excited about. I'm not going to announce it just yet until we really get this thing rolling, but I do have, because the whole point of doing this was to learn how to do podcasting, right? How to do channels, to do video editing, do audio editing, all those different things. And I'm not an expert at it by any means, but I've grown a lot in what I know and what I don't know. And I feel comfortable moving to the next stage of introducing one of the other shows that I've really wanted to do. I'm not quite ready to do the other show I've been wanting to do. That's going to be coming in probably a couple years. But I'm not anywhere close to being done in growing what I'm doing as far as my brand goes and just creating content, being creative. I enjoy being creative. I enjoy doing these research things. And it's a lot of fun for me. And again, liking and subscribing and telling people about this show helps me do this. But either way, I'm going to be doing it because it's just a lot of fun for me, and I just really enjoy doing it. The next episode will be on NL playoff teams. Now, as I said, I've mentioned it a few times during the episode, I'm trying to make these shows shorter. I don't want to go an hour and a half, hour 45 anymore. I want to go from anywhere from a half hour to an hour at tops. So I'm trying to cut down the show length if I have to, because I don't want to shorten on the content of it. I don't want the information to be half. I want you to get all of the information. I want to do it the right way. So if I have to make it longer, I'm going to make it into a 2-parters. And that's what I'm going to be doing going forward. Instead of just making it one long episode, I'll be doing it in multiple stages and multiple parts. The next episode, though, will be probably long as it is because I've gone through all 30 teams, 5 teams at a time, and I'm not going to shorten the last 5 teams, especially considering that all those 5 teams have large fan bases and they're all really good. They're really good in 2019, really good in 2018, probably going to be good in 2020 and 2021, right? And that is, of course, the Brewers, the Cardinals, the Braves, the Dodgers, and the world champion Nationals. And that's why the National League is going after the American Leagues, because the Nationals are the champions, so they're getting the last go at it. And again, I'm not going to shorten you guys on the content and what I'm going to be talking about when it comes to those teams. But moving forward after that, we're going to be pivoting to a little bit shorter shows. Again, I hope you guys liked the show. Hope you guys like it. Again, like, subscribe. I'm going to mention it as many times as I can to you guys till you guys do it. You can reach me. All my information is here. On my Instagram, JustAReyes. Twitter, JustAReyes13. My website, again, justareyes.com. And my email for that website is info@justareyes.com. I also have info.justareyes@gmail.com. I don't check that one as often as I do info@justareyes.com. And the best way to reach me is just go to my website and go to the contact me portion of it. Leave me a little bit of a comment. Leave me all those different things. And I will get back to you as soon as I see it, which is probably pretty quick because even if I'm on work, the second I get home or whatever, every day I try to check that website. I try to check my website. I try to check my Instagram every day and my email for my website. So again, I'm going to try a little less long-winded. Hope you guys really did enjoy this episode. It was a lot of fun for me. I can look forward to doing more episodes on stadiums because I really feel like ballparks and fields they don't get the love that they deserve. They are a huge part of this game. They're a huge part of what makes this game incredible. Many people want to talk about the players and the teams, and they do that, of course, but they also talk about the ballparks because of, right? I mean, the ballparks, they're a huge part of it. And a lot of them are gorgeous facilities and gorgeous stadiums that they pour a lot of time and money and effort to build for that very reason. Now, I'm going to get out of this episode, and I look forward to talking to you guys real soon.